Welcome back, everyone. Today we are going to be reviewing the Call of Cthulhu scenario, Refractions of Glasston, which was written by a bunch of college students over one semester and is really good. So as you can see, my opinion on it is very positive. So first off, I would like to say that this is technically a to buy or not to buy, except it's completely free. And you can find this scenario in the link in the description, and I highly suggest you download it. You got nothing to lose. It's off Drive-Thru RPG, and it's really good. So as you may already know, we have done a playthrough of it, and you can check that out right over there somewhere. And yeah. I will begin display capturing and show you what I'm talking about. Show you what you're going to be getting with the Refractions of Glasston scenario for Call of Cthulhu. So first off, let me say that there's artwork. That's the first thing that I noticed that made this more professional than your average free thing on the Miskatonic repository. It has really nice original artwork. It is a 1920s horror scenario set in northern India. It was written by a bunch of people whose names I probably can't pronounce, but you can see it right there. Sam, Carson, Joy, Elijah, Racy, Emily, and J. Tucker White, I believe. Yeah, lots of names. So as you can see, it was a collaborative project of a bunch of college students. I find that awesome because my entire channel is, I know a lot of older people watch my channel, but my entire channel is the driving idea behind why I made a YouTube channel in the first place was to inspire people my own age to get back into this hobby, whether it's through Dungeons and Dragons or Call of Cthulhu, the hobby of collaboratively telling a story through tabletop role-playing games, because it's so much better than video games, and I'm a huge fan of, classic literature like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Shakespeare. I just find great joy and lots of enjoyment comes to me through this medium of play. And I wanted to share that with other people, get my generation into this game, because I've gotten as many friends that I have into this type of game, but most people my age are off playing Fortnite. And it's pretty sad. So I'm hoping that through this I would be able to reach out to more people that are my age. That all being said, Refractions of Glasston was written by a bunch of college students. Now, I don't know about you, but that to me sounds like exactly what I hope my channel inspires people to do. And so I thought it would be a perfect thing for us to play through, and it actually went really well. So first off, if you watch the playthrough, I would like to mention that it was the first session I did not have access to the actual scenario, so a lot of it was improv, and the second session was a lot more in line with what the scenario actually had to offer. So first off, you get the table of contents. You get a foreword, very short, and a from the writers, a brief thing that every single one of the writers of this wrote, like a paragraph about themselves and about the process of writing the scenario. Chapter 1. Some timelines, and basically the dramatis personae, I guess is what they call it. I think that's what they call it in a lot of the professional scenarios from Chaosium, which is basically a list of the non-player characters, and a lot of times it also includes their statistics, but I think the statistics are in the index or somewhere, or characters and monsters later on in the scenario. So as you can see, you get like 40, 41, 42 pages of content, right? You then get Chapter 2, Odd Happenings in Glasston. You get the town locations, and a lot of story hooks to get the investigators invested in what's going on. There are also pre-generated characters, which are all completely integrated with the story. Me and my friends mostly did not use the pre-gens. I think one of them did, but he tweaked it. And we made it so that one of them was kind of insane and that they were stuck inside the town, and they actually did not come into the scenario until a little bit later. And the other two were reporters who were down on their luck and were grasping at straws and found the last case of a story in this town. Then you get Chapter 3, which is, since Chapter 2 is all hooks, Chapter 3 is, and 4, is the actual, I guess you could say, meat of the horrific and mythos-inspired elements of the scenario, although a lot in Chapter 2 also, pulls you into that state of mind. Then you get characters and monster statistics, the pre-generated characters, all the handouts kind of collected at the end, which was nice, and an index. Now, let's see. I love all the artwork in this. Let me give you a brief glimpse. I'm not going to go through too much of it. 46 pages. There it is, right up there. You get 46 pages of content. Let me go down. Let's see. Okay. So let me just show you how this is put together. Look at this. Very, very, very professional. That's the first thing I noticed was, for a college, project, very professional looking. It reads just like a Chaosium scenario does. The actual idea driving the scenario, and this was a mild spoiler alert, but there is this glass that is infecting people, and it will slowly turn them into glass. And there's a ton that goes into it, and you would classify the scenario a little bit more along the lines of body horror, or something that's supposed to scare people when they're thinking about a sickness or a disease. It's actually interesting how this was almost relevant in light of the current events. Not really super relevant, but it was still like, it's a sickness. It's meant to be played with 4 to 7 players. I played with 3, and it's still, we ended up with a TPK, and that is something I'm going to go into. This has high chance of death in this, so the 4 to 7 makes more sense. 7's a lot, though, especially since Call of Cthulhu is a game where I personally feel like the fewer investigators, the better. You want at least 2, but too much, like 5, 6, 7, I think is too much for me to both control and to really evoke this sense of isolation from. Not always, though. A lot of times, if you have too many characters, the greatest thing to do is turn one of them into the enemy and then make them all suspicious of each other. Because that is the best way to break camaraderie and break down the investigator spirits. But I digress. Let's continue. Very well written. Everything is perfect. You get a lot of history of the place itself. Some stuff about prohibition. Some stuff about depicting different things. Then you get a few local myths that were circulating the area at the time, as the Kokomo Hum and Reader Road's Vanishing Girl. Very, very, very inspiring and useful little subplot type things that you can weave into the actual scenario. I liked it a lot. Then you got the different characters. Not all of them, but some of them have little drawings. They look hand-drawn. They look very nice. There are a few small handouts. There's a map. It is a very, very simple map, but it is a functional map, especially since I'm not the type of person who likes dungeon crawls myself. So, I found the map perfect for what I like to use it for. Let's see. Let me show you how they did stuff like this. You got, the name. I'm going to keep saying this, but very professional. It looks exactly like a Chaosium product. In fact, it is better than a Chaosium product. And I'm going to compare it. You have the most well-known scenario would be The Haunting. Maybe not the most well-known, but the most well-known free one that comes with the starter kit, right? Now, The Haunting is also a pretty short scenario. This one we were able to play in 2 sessions. If we had not improvised so much at the beginning, it might have taken 3. We could have stretched it out even longer or continued the adventure past what was in here. I think that 2 to 3 is a good estimate for how many scenario sessions it'll take. I also feel that you could condense it if you wanted to, but I think to get the full impact, you want to take your time to really let it sink in. It was a slow build, especially for bodily horror. I think that works very well to make sure that it stays in keeping with cosmic horror as well, and it doesn't just become a Gorno or blood and gore everywhere. So they did a very good job in the way they wrote it, the way everything flows together and all the characters are connected. I like that they left some entries in the backstories of these characters blank so that you can personalize your investigators. This is a pre-gen, by the way. You got the collected handouts. There's some good stuff in here. An index. I'm looking for the end. Here we go. Let me read to you what they want you to know about it. Elias Taylor Winters, the CEO of TWJ Co., discovered a secret to the glassmaking process that finally put him above his long-standing competition, Ball Glass. Shattering expectations for such a small company in rural India, Winters has put Glasston on the map. What a conveniently named town. The town and its economy are booming, but not everything in Glasston is as it should be. Refractions of Glasston is a standalone scenario for Call of Cthulhu's 7th edition. It takes place in a rural town in northwest India set in the 1920s. Inside, you will find a thrilling mystery in the rural town of Glasston fueled by intrigue and disturbing encounters, a history of Indiana that will prepare keepers for running a scenario in such an atypical setting, hooks for incorporating local cryptids or real-life occurrences into the scenario, multiple endings, and ways to continue the adventure for investigation addicts. Now, I liked that they had multiple endings in there, and I will say that I improvised the ending a lot and took all the choices my investigators made into account when creating that ending. And so when it says multiple endings, it's really the same thing that any Call of Cthulhu, any well-written Call of Cthulhu scenario has, which is infinite endings. Refractions of Glasston is the result of a creative collaboration between the professional writing department at Taylor University, Upland, and Chaosium Incorporated. The creators are all students at Taylor University. Though many of the team are members of the professional writing major, this is their first foray into the world of RPG writing. With help and advice provided by Chaosium's Mike Mason and Lynn Hardy. Another reason why this is so well done is because they had help from Chaosium's high-ups, right? These writers, editors, and RPG enthusiasts set out to create a unique adventure for Call of Cthulhu fans to enjoy. Another thing I love about this, a lot of these students did not know what Call of Cthulhu was before doing this, and now they've been introduced to a new system. Some of them have been introduced to the hobby completely, and that's awesome. Now, let me just give you a brief overview of what I would like to bring your attention to. Very well written. It's completely free, so I can't even say to buy or not to buy because there is no price. They recently updated it, and I liked what they did to it. They fleshed out some characters and fixed some stuff. Very, very well put together. I really enjoyed running it. I found it to be far better a scenario than The Haunting, which is why I brought up The Haunting earlier. The Haunting is a classic scenario, but I recommend this one for beginning keepers over The Haunting. And the reason for that is The Haunting is so isolated. I do not really this is just me. Maybe some keepers would have an easier time of it if it was isolated, I don't know. But for me specifically, I find it much easier to run a scenario when me and my players are not trapped in one area, in one house, with one monster. There were so many different ways to go. Minimal preparation is required. I just wrote down a list of the non-player characters. I do recommend you go through it read it like more than once, because I only read it once and did not have access to the scenario, and felt that having access would have made at least the descriptions, at the very least, a little bit better, because I did not have very descriptive descriptions off the top of my head. And the scenario itself, another thing about it is that it'll have these little text boxes that you can read aloud or paraphrase that describe different locations or characters, which I found very helpful for new keepers, or any keeper, really. And because of that, I felt if you have the scenario, minimal work is required to actually run it. The pre-gens are all well thought out. The one minor detail I would say is the monster, or the mythos creature, is extremely powerful, which makes sense. But I would tone it down, perhaps, just a tiny bit, if you are a keeper planning on running it. If you want the players to have a chance, especially if you have less players than the suggested number. Because the main, and again, this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you're planning on playing this, go watch one of my other videos. But the main way to defeat this monster is using a spell. In this spell, you have to invest magic points into, and each magic point you invest will end up doing a point of damage if you succeed at a power roll. And you need the players to kind of collaborate on this, because no investigator is going to have, I believe the enemy had like 30 hit points. So I don't think anyone has 30 magic points unless they've already been playing through some other campaign or something and got different magic items, or have increased their magic points somehow. And because of that, I would definitely say if you have less players, bring it down a little bit. Like if you have less than 4, change the hit points to 20 or something like that. I don't know. There's a high chance of TPK. That's what I'm trying to get at. It is a very high risk scenario. You could die. There are really no other problems that I had with the entire scenario. And personally, I think that, and I brought up the fact that the TPK is an imminent, or very, very likely, because some people might not like that. I found it very useful for the scenario, and I was able to improv a little bit of a workaround to it because of the way this monster's described. And I guess that's a little bit too much of a spoiler, so I'm not really going to... If you watched our scenario, you'll see what I did. And it's basically I tied other mythos entities into it, because the one in this scenario is not super powerful and could be plotted against by the more powerful ones who perceive this one as a threat. And that is not in the scenario. I added that. You know, use that however you want. So yeah, my final verdict on this, 10 out of 10. I mean, when I first read through this, I went on there and I went on DriveThruRPG and wrote a really short review, which basically was like, very well written. Why is this free? Why is this free? This scenario is better than The Haunting, better than Amidst the Ancient Trees, which comes with the Keeper's Guide. This is my opinion, by the way, to me. I really liked Crimson Letters, the other scenario that came with the Keeper's Guide. So there's that. But this is really, really, really well done. And for a free product, it's 10 out of 10. Awesome job to anyone who worked on it, and anyone who hasn't played it or read through it already. You need to find a group, play it, or run it. Go download it. Links in the description. Thank you very much for watching. Yeah, I found this to be an amazing scenario. Please like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You'll get lots of more great Game Master advice and content. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for coming with me on this journey through these different scenarios. I really enjoyed this one. Deathstroke 9, out. We are Legion.